The Knights of the Empire are some of its best defense against the terrors of the Old World. These heavily armed and armored warriors are trained from childhood to be living engines of death, capable of felling Chaos Warriors and Orcs with their mighty blades. They charge into the heart of battle atop barded steeds, clad in door-forged plate while clutching gleaming lances. Not all of these warriors fight the same way, however. A myriad of knightly orders exist within the Empire, each with a certain set of traditions, beliefs, and fighting styles. Some are dedicated to certain faiths, while others exist only to fight a specific foe. A relative up-and-comer amongst these knightly orders, dedicated to an almost foreign goddess, are the Knights of the Blazing Sun. These knights have pledged themselves to Myrmidia, goddess of warfare and wisdom, and take a more holistic approach to protecting the Empire than the Savage Order of the White Wolf or Zealous Order of the Fiery Heart. While other knights seek battle for the glory it brings, the Knights of the Blazing Sun seek battle so they can protect the people. Then, once the danger is past, the knights set out to civilize the world around them. Walls are fortified, bridges built, land cleared, and children educated. The Knights of the Blazing Sun know that lances and swords are necessary to drive back the demons of the gate, but only knowledge and wisdom can keep them away for good. As their mantra goes, we go where we are needed, and we do what must be done. In recent years, Grandmaster Otto Berenger has seen the Knights of the Blazing Sun rapidly expand, with chapter houses springing up all over the Empire. Thanks to his hard work, the sun shines on the Order like never before. That being said, what does a lore-accurate army of these noble warriors look like in Total War Warhammer? While they don't function on quite the same scale as the Elector counts, the knightly orders of the Empire are known to go on crusade, and the Knights of the Blazing Sun are no exception. Indeed, they were founded during a crusade into Araby. That means you could theme an entire army around the Knights of the Blazing Sun in-game, and I've done just that. After extensive research and playtesting, I found an army that matches what the Knights of the Blazing Sun may bring into battle, if they can't count on an Elector count or General of the Empire to back them up. As usual, all of these tests were done on very hard battle and campaign difficulty. If you play on easier or harder difficulties, your mileage with this build may vary. Keep that in mind as we go along. As a knightly order, an army themed around the Knights of the Blazing Sun has knights. A lot of knights. A lot of Knights of the Blazing Sun, to be specific. When the Order goes on crusade, the bulk of their fighting force consists of warriors from this knightly brotherhood. They cut quite a figure on the eve of battle, clad in ornate plate mail that's been polished black with gold etchings. Stylized sunbursts adorn their banners, armor, and shields, and they wield lances, spears, and swords with devastating effect. In battle, the knights rely upon their skill at arms and heavy armor to protect themselves from harm, while they skewer their enemies from atop their barded warhorses. While the Knights of the Blazing Sun relish a cavalry charge as much as the next knightly order, their greatest strengths are their minds and strategic forethought. The Order isn't above utilizing tactics like ambushes, misinformation, and treachery to defeat the enemies of civilization. While other Knights of the Empire and Bretonnia might disdain such underhanded tactics, none can argue that the Knights of the Blazing Sun don't get results. The Knights of the Blazing Sun are led by their chapter masters, or Hochmeisters, who act as regional commanders of the Order. Each chapter house has a Hochmeister leading it, and they exert a great deal of control over the knights living there. The Hochmeisters, in turn, answer to the Grand Master of the Order. The most fleshed out resources name Otto Berengar as the current Grand Master of the Knights of the Blazing Sun, though other sources name Siegfried Trappenfield instead. Otto was described as a scholarly fellow, quick-witted, and ferociously dedicated to the Order. He views education as part of the campaign against the forces of chaos, and is a firm believer that his knights should have knowledge and skills beyond combat. Otto's efforts have seen the Knights of the Blazing Sun spread across the Empire faster than any other knightly order, and it may be thanks to him that the faith of Myrmidia has begun to supplant that of Ulrich's among some regiments of soldiers. Like most knightly orders, the Knights of the Blazing Sun are often accompanied by pistoliers. These young nobles ride alongside the knights to gain combat experience. If they do well, and they prove themselves in battle, they'll be offered entry to the Order, a process known as gaining their spurs. This is common practice for the sons of less well-to-do nobles, as it lets them gain entry to the Order through merit, rather than simply paying their way into a full knighthood like the richer applicants. The Knights of the Blazing Sun, for their part, are adept at putting these fledgling warriors to good use, having them act as scouts and light cavalry for the larger force. Contingents of infantry also accompany the Knights of the Blazing Sun. While the armored horsemen are devastating on the charge, they understand that controlling the battlefield sometimes requires footmen. As such, records indicate that melee and ranged infantry can be found marching beneath the Order's banner. Spearmen, excellent for maintaining a defensive position, hold their ground while crossbowmen, safely positioned behind them, unleash withering salvos into the ranks of their enemies. These common warriors don't form the bulk of the Order's army, but they act as the anvil upon which a knightly hammer can break the enemies of civilization. Finally, the Knights of the Blazing Sun are far more comfortable with advanced technology and magic than almost any other knightly order. Cannons and mortars are used to soften up enemies and disrupt their ranks, making them more vulnerable to cavalry charges. These artillery pieces are also used to bring down large foes from a distance. While the knights aren't cowards, they don't have the insane death wish other knights appear to have. If a giant or dragon can be killed by a cannonball instead of a lance, the Knights of the Blazing Sun would prefer to use the cannonball. Wizards, in turn, can bolster and heal the knights, injure their enemies, or otherwise alter the battlefield to swing the balance of power. While zealous Sigmarites or superstitious Ulricans might turn their nose up at such powerful allies, the Knights of the Blazing Sun are a more practical lot, and they'd prefer to have mages amongst their midst if possible. After that long-winded preamble, we've covered the lore basis for what a crusading Knights of the Blazing Sun army might look like. With that, we can finally begin putting the pieces together and build the lore-accurate army in Total War Warhammer. As always, we begin with our general. While a Grandmaster General would be more accurate, we currently don't have those in the game, and I always try to do these videos without mods. You can get around this by using a basic General of the Empire, who you should name Otto Berengar. If you're trying to represent Otto's craftiness in-game, try to get a general with the Intelligent trait. When leveling him up, you should do whatever you want, though I recommend getting a lot of points in the blue tree and red trees to represent his skill as a strategist and tactician. When Otto hits the appropriate level, he should go down the Drill Instructor minor skill tree. It gives bonuses that favor cavalry, such as army-wide vigor loss reduction and increased speed and charge bonus for cavalry units. While your knights will end the campaign with more charge bonus than you could possibly ever need, every little bit helps. Unfortunately, you'll need to keep Otto on a warhorse. While Grandmasters can ride Imperial Griffins and Pegasi on tabletop, there's no evidence of Otto or any other Grandmaster of the Knights of the Blazing Sun ever doing so. While putting him on a Griffin would increase his utility drastically, it's not very accurate, which kinda defeats the whole point of the army. For your hero contingent, you should bring 2 Empire Captains and 1 Wizard. The Empire Captains act as renowned knights or Hawkmeisters. While you don't need to include a specific name for these characters, I do recommend you name one of them Hector Goetz. That's Goetz, spelled G-O-E-T-Z. At least I think that's pronounced Goetz. My German's not great. He's the protagonist of the Knights of the Blazing Sun novel, which is an excellent read. These captains don't have flaming attacks innately, but you can equip them with magic weapons like the Drakefire pistol that grant fire attacks to better match their knightly brothers. They should also be kept on war horses, just like Otto. When leveling the captains up, take the Admired Man-at-Arms skill when you reach the proper level. This further increases cavalry charge bonus army-wide, seeing a trend here, and decreases their upkeep, which is absolutely crucial. If they're right alongside your knights, Hold the Line also gives your cavalry some much-needed staying power in melee. They aren't just a source of buffs for your army, though. While not terribly dangerous alone, these Empire Captains can do decent work against other non-legendary lords, especially when fighting alongside each other and Otto. The Wizard represents the Order's functional relationship with the Colleges of Magic, and you have free reign in choosing which lore you bring. Due to the huge amounts of fire damage in this army, I generally recommend taking a Bright Wizard with the lore of fire due to their Kindle Flame special ability, briefly increasing enemy fire weakness map-wide after the wizard casts a spell. Jade Wizards synergize with your army as well, as your knights and characters benefit from easy access to healing. The buff and vortex spells from the Lore of Life are pretty good too. Other Lords of Magic probably do decently as well, but these were the 2 that I theory crafted with the most, and I actually built the army with the Bright Wizard. Just know that the choice is yours, whatever your feeling goes. With characters done, we can get to the real meat of the army. Your most common units, unsurprisingly, are Knights of the Blazing Sun. Bring 6 of these guys. They're heavy cavalry with flaming attacks and a crazy high charge bonus. Their flaming attacks makes them potent counters to lightly armored healing builds, and their speed and bronze shields ensure they can catch ranged units that aren't properly protected by infantry with little fuss. Unfortunately, they have a pretty low melee defense for their price point, so you'll have to be careful with them. Charge your enemies from the back and don't stick around too long if you can help it. Your characters and the knights form the core of your army, but the rest is no less important. 2 units of pistoliers reflect the eager aspirants hoping to prove themselves and officially gain admission into the order. They can help soften up dangerous enemies and take care of unprotected artillery, leaving your knights free to charge more daunting foes. 2 cannons act as a serviceable artillery battery, weakening blocks of heavy infantry, sniping enemy artillery, and pounding away at dangerous monsters. They can also force the enemy to approach you. This is especially nice, as it gives you a chance to use your knights to envelop and destroy any unit that gets isolated on the march forward. You can round out your army with 4 shielded spearmen and 2 crossbowmen, representing the infantrymen that accompany the Knights of the Blazing Sun into battle. The crossbows shoot the enemies as they approach, while the spearmen form a tight battle line to hide your ranged units behind. The crossbows don't excel against armor or fast-moving targets, but sometimes weight of fire is enough to carry the day. The spearmen also serve as an anvil for your enemies to crash into, before the knights and characters destroy them with rear charges and spells. As you can see, the spearmen wear a lot of hats, and in some ways they're the linchpin of the army's success. If they can hold, the rest of the army can act as intended. If they can't, you have to improvise. Fast. If you're looking for landmarks that might improve this army, I have a few recommendations. Every knightly chapter house decreases their upkeep by 5%, capping out at 20% when all 4 are built. The Blazing Sun chapter house in Talabheim also decreases recruitment costs for Knights of the Blazing Sun faction-wide by 35%, increases their faction-wide recruitment rank by 3, decreases local recruitment duration by 1 turn, and gives every Knight of the Blazing Sun the flammable contact effect, effectively increasing their damage, and that of anything else in the army that deals fire damage. As if that wasn't enough, the chapter house also adds 2 Knights of the Blazing Sun to Talabheim's garrison. I don't know about you guys, but I love getting fun, flavorful additions to my garrisons, even if they are knights that can't man the walls. The Archiecclesiatum of Myrmidia in Margarita increases Knight of the Blazing Sun recruitment rank by 3 faction-wide as well, and the Corone Tournament Grounds landmark in Corone increases all cavalry recruitment rank by 2 faction-wide. If you secure all these buildings, you can easily replenish any knights you lose with new rank 8 units, and that's assuming you don't have anything else increasing recruitment rank. That's not a bad deal overall, though it takes a while to get to. Now, with all that wonderful lore set up and list building done, we can talk about how the army of the Knights of the Blazing Sun functions in-game. In simple terms, it sucks. I have never run an army this bad before, and while I'm sure this series will take me to even worse places, I'm hoping there aren't many armies that require so much work for so little payoff. This thing was absolutely terrible on all accounts. On the campaign side of things, the army is not cheap. While spearmen, pistoliers, and crossbowmen are relatively inexpensive to recruit and maintain, 6 units of Knights of the Blazing Sun are remarkably costly. Each one comes in at 300 gold per turn, and that's before we factor in supply lines. These knights will take a bite out of your wallet even if you go out of your way to decrease their upkeep with skill points and knightly chapter houses. Thus, while it's not terribly hard to get a settlement to Tier 3 and construct the buildings necessary to recruit all these units, it's hard to pay for them while also keeping your initial army in fighting form. Then, once you bring the army to battle, it's not even worth the investment. This might be my lack of micro-speaking, but there's just too much to keep track of. With 6 units of shock cavalry and 2 units of pistoliers, I can't use every unit to their maximum efficiency. I would micro a few knights, only to turn around and see that another set had been caught by dragon ogres or blown to bits by rattling guns. That's before we even consider things like target priority with the cannons and crossbows, when to use certain spells, and popping my general and captains as magic items. The worst part is, even when I use the knights effectively, they just didn't do enough damage to justify being about a third of my army. Yeah, they have a charge bonus 127 when all is said and done, which is nice, but charges can be finicky. Unbraced infantry will take the whole thing, but braced infantry, cavalry, monsters, characters, and pretty much anything else won't take the full charge. You just can't get enough saturation on those units to do all your damage before the charge wears off. That means that, at the end of the day, you only have 42 weapon strength in sustained combat, only 13 of which is armor piercing. Anything with 70 or 80 or even more armor is going to laugh them off once the initial charge is over. Considering the Knights are supposed to be where most of your killing power is coming from, this is a major issue. As previously mentioned, the Knights of the Blazing Sun are also pretty squishy for a heavy cavalry unit. This is incredibly annoying, and a big reason why poor micro punishes them so badly. Their melee defense is low, befitting shock cavalry, so they rely heavily on their 115 armor value. Unfortunately, most late game units do predominantly armor-piercing damage, rendering it functionally useless. The Knights have bronze shields, respectable spell resistance, and can even get a bit of missile resistance with the tech tree, but that doesn't help them in a sustained fight. They don't even have a token amount of physical resistance, let alone a ward save. Combine that with the fact that anti-large halberds and monsters are incredibly common in most rosters, and you can see why the Knights begin to suffer so badly. I've reserved most of my contempt for this army to the Knights, but the rest of it isn't great either. Cannons are good, but they pale in comparison to Hellblaster volley guns, Hellstorm rocket batteries, and steam tanks. Crossbows are easier to hide behind your lines than handgunners, but they do worse against fast targets and heavy armor. Spearmen with shields are actually surprisingly decent, but when you only have 4 of them, you find they keep getting outflanked and overwhelmed. Their lack of armor-piercing damage also makes them less dangerous than their halberdier counterparts. Honestly, you could probably swap them out for halberdiers, but I don't think that would ultimately change too much about why this army sucks. Even the characters aren't great. Empire captains and generals aren't fantastic combat characters compared to other factions, and the fact you have to take them on horse to stay lore accurate makes them even worse. They're taking anti-large bonus damage in return for a bit of extra speed so they can get stuck in melee infantry blobs even better. The only piece of the army I don't have a complaint about is the Bright Wizard. Kindle Flame synergizes nicely with your knights, and Burning Head, Flamestorm, and Piercing Bolts of Burning are always good spells. Ultimately, the biggest problem with this army is that it's a hammer and anvil army, with a crappy hammer and a crappy anvil. The spear-wielding anvil can't stay alive long enough for the hammer to hit home, and unless you're fighting lightly armored, regenerating infantry, the hammer won't even hit hard enough to turn the tide. The crusading army of the Knights of the Blazing Sun can't even convincingly win against armies they should counter on paper. For instance, you'd expect them to kill Skaven like nothing else. Besides Storm Vermin, pretty much everything on the Skaven roster is lightly armored. Their most dangerous units rely on ranged weapons to do damage, which you counter simply by virtue of being knights. Most of their big creatures are lightly armored, regenerating monsters that should be easy pickings for your flaming lances. Unfortunately, even with such a favorable matchup, the Knights of the Blazing Sun can only fight one army at a time without being completely overwhelmed. If there's even a few units of Storm Vermin with halberds, you lose whatever advantage you might have had. Their high model count, anti-large bonus, and heavy armor makes them excellent at warding off Knights of the Blazing Sun from otherwise vulnerable infantry blobs, weapons teams, and rad ogres. I consistently took terrible beatings at the hands of Clan Moulder. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. These were some of my more favorable matchups. When I tried fighting Warriors of Chaos with this army, I got stomped in the next week. Usually I stop playtesting one of these things because I get bored or a big patch ruins my save file, but I stopped playing the Knights of the Blazing Sun army out of frustration. I just couldn't keep the damn thing alive. That's not to say this army is completely useless, at least on paper. I didn't get this thing up and running until turn 70-ish, fairly late in campaign, so it might do better against lower tier armies, though then you have to debate cost effectiveness even more. Either way, the large volume of cavalry with flaming attacks also makes them theoretically decent against certain Tomb Kings, Vampire Counts, Beastmen, or Wood Elf armies, and I think it could do alright against Norskin armies so long as they leave the Marauder champions with great weapons at home. I never got the chance to test these matchups, however, so that'll just have to remain a mystery until one of you brave souls tries it out. Also, a player with better micro may not blend to their knights as often as I did and get more out of it. Still, I really can't recommend this army to anyone. There's easier, more effective Empire army compositions out there, and even if you enjoy heavy cavalry micro, Demigryphs do it better. My final rating is 3 out of 10, and I really hope I never have to play one that goes lower. With that, we have come to the end of our overview of what a lore-accurate Knights of the Blazing Sun army might look like in Total War Warhammer. Don't let its extremely lackluster performance in-game turn you off from the Order as a whole. Their lore is super cool. Their emphasis on knowledge, education, and ingenuity is really endearing, and the Knights of the Blazing Sun are my personal favorite. If you like books, their novel, Knight of the Blazing Sun by Josh Reynolds, is one of the better Warhammer novels out there. I can't picture it enough, at least to Warhammer fans. The The world building's good, the characters are a lot of fun, and it's well paced. That's where I found the character names for this video, as well as the Order's fondness for crossbows and spearmen when fielding footmen. Also, if you're more tabletop minded, their color scheme looks fantastic when done properly. A nice, glossy black with gold trim is gorgeous, and while I'm personally collecting and painting dwarfs at the moment, I'd probably pick up a box of Empire Knights just to paint them like Knights of the Blazing Sun if given the chance, especially if new sculpts were released. Bit of a shame that their rules don't look great on tabletop either, but that's just the way it goes, I suppose. Maybe next edition, eh? That's all I have for now, though. As always, thank you to my ever-generous patrons, Emmy, Golden Gander, and newcomer Unknown for their continued support. Welcome to the throng. Until next time, this has been Sigmar's Chosen, signing off for now.